June 15, 1992. Downtown Chicago is waking up the way it always does. Elevators climb, coffee steams, and the river slides past office windows like it has for generations. And in the basement of a quiet building near the Loop, a janitor pauses mid-step. The floor feels wrong. It's cold. It's moving. And he looks down and sees ripples spreading across polished concrete, as if the building itself has begun to sweat. Somewhere beneath him, something has broken open, and not a pipe, not a drain, something older, something the city forgot it ever built. Above ground, nothing looks unusual. The sky is clear. The streets are dry. And tour boats idle along the river while commuters complain about traffic and deadlines. But beneath the feet of millions, water is already racing through darkness. And it isn't flooding streets. It isn't crashing through windows. It's invading quietly, slipping into basements, vaults, tunnels, and electrical rooms. And the city is being drowned from the inside. Chicago has always been a city that builds on top of itself. When it outgrows the past, it simply buries it. In the late 1800s, and as the city exploded with industry, congestion became unbearable. Horses clogged the streets. Coal smoke choked the air. So Chicago did something radical. And it didn't widen the roads. It went underground. Investors carved out a second city below the first, a hidden grid of tunnels stretching for miles beneath the Loop. And 40 feet down, electric trains hauled coal, ash, freight, and goods through narrow passages no sunlight ever touched. And buildings above depended on them like organs depend on veins. For decades, this underground world worked flawlessly. It powered theaters, cooled department stores, and kept commerce moving without anyone above needing to think about it. Then progress arrived. Trucks replaced trains. Highways replaced tunnels. The lights were shut off, and the locomotives were abandoned where they sat, frozen mid-route, their metal arms still reaching for wires that would never spark again. And slowly, memory faded, and the city-sealed entrances filed away blueprints and moved on. What lay beneath became a rumor, a curiosity, a footnote. But the tunnels never stopped existing, and by the early 1990s, almost no one remembered how interconnected downtown really was. Nearly every major building still had a doorway, a conduit, and a forgotten opening that led straight into that hollow web. It was a system with no purpose anymore, but also no safeguards. It just waited. Months before the flood, and construction crews worked along the Chicago River reinforcing bridge supports. They drove massive wooden pilings into the riverbed, thick as trees, and meant to protect against barges. One of those pilings landed a few inches too close to an abandoned tunnel wall. The tunnel wasn't concrete, it was clay, old, brittle, and it cracked. Just slightly, enough for the river to notice. At first, nothing dramatic happened. Mud seeped in, dampness spread, and a quiet pressure began pushing against the tunnel's skin, minute by minute. Workers spotted it and reported it. Engineers inspected it. Reports were written, and estimates were made. $10,000 they said could fix it. But $10,000 needed approval. Approval needed discussion. Discussion needed time. And time was exactly what the river had. On the morning the flood truly began, no alarms sounded. No sirens warned the city, and water slipped through the crack and into the tunnels like a thief. Once inside, it didn't slow down. It found paths. It found connections. It surged forward, and guided by a century-old design meant to move material efficiently through the heart of downtown. Now it was moving destruction. Basements filled first, and then electrical rooms, then underground garages, filing cabinets floated. Elevators shut down mid-shaft. In vaults designed to stop bullets and fire, and water crept under steel doors and pooled around stacks of cash. Guards could only watch. Guns were useless here. On the streets, people felt nothing. They walked to lunch, and they waited for crosswalks. They stood above a city quietly hemorrhaging beneath them. Then the river itself betrayed the secret. Near a bridge, the surface began to spin, and not gently, violently. A widening circle, dragging water downward as if the river had sprung a drain. Police stared into it, unsure what they were seeing. And this wasn't erosion. It wasn't current. The river wasn't flowing forward anymore. It was falling. By the time city officials understood what was happening, and the damage had already multiplied beyond comprehension. Engineers tried to plug the hole from above, dumping stone, gravel, anything heavy enough to sink. The river swallowed it all. Mattresses followed. Then debris, it didn't matter. The breach was deeper than desperation. By early afternoon, downtown emptied, and hundreds of thousands of workers were sent home. Power was cut to entire blocks. The Loop became unnaturally quiet, and skyscrapers humming on backup generators like patients on life support. The streets stayed dry. The sun kept shining. But the city was bleeding below the skin, And this was only the beginning. As the day dragged on, the scale of what was happening finally became impossible to ignore. The underground wasn't just filling with water, and it was becoming a high-pressure delivery system, forcing the river into places it was never meant to be. And every connection the tunnels had once proudly offered now became a liability. Every forgotten doorway turned into an open wound. In the basements of department stores, and water climbed the walls in steady, merciless lines. Merchandise meant for upcoming seasons vanished beneath brown, swirling currents. In old theaters, and props and costumes soaked up river water like sponges, decades of history dissolving in silence. Museums raced against humidity as much as flooding, and knowing that moisture alone could destroy irreplaceable artifacts. Employees formed human chains, carrying fragile pieces upward, hands shaking not from cold, but from the knowledge that they were losing a race they couldn't see. Financial institutions faced a different terror, and their power systems were never designed to be submerged. Cooling pumps failed. Mainframe computers overheated, screens went dark, and trading floors that once roared with noise fell eerily silent as workers realized that if the systems died, transactions across the globe could simply disappear, and people who made fortunes betting on fractions of seconds suddenly understood how helpless they were against something that didn't care about markets or money, and city leaders arrived to find no visible enemy. There was nothing to barricade, nothing to evacuate away from except the idea of downtown itself. And you couldn't point to the disaster, you had to imagine it. Engineers drilled straight down from the streets, boring into darkness, racing against rising pressure. And they poured quick, setting concrete into the tunnels, creating massive plugs on either side of the breach. It was surgery performed blind, and guided by maps older than the people holding them. It took days to stop the river, weeks to drain what it had claimed. Pumps ran nonstop, and vomiting water back into the river it had escaped from. The city smelled damp and metallic, like a basement that would never fully dry. Businesses stayed closed, and repairs stretched on. The normal rhythm of downtown life returned slowly, cautiously, as if the ground itself could no longer be trusted. When the final numbers came in, and they felt unreal. Nearly $2 billion in damage, lost business, emergency repairs, and lawsuits. A price tag so large it barely fit on paper, and hovering over it all was the original estimate. $10,000. The cost of a repair that was delayed, debated, and deprioritized. And for every dollar saved in hesitation, nearly $200,000 were lost in reality. It was a mathematical cruelty that no apology could undo, and the aftermath demanded someone to blame. Resignations followed, reports were written, procedures were changed, but the deeper failure wasn't a single decision or a single official. It was amnesia. A city that had forgotten its own anatomy, and infrastructure that had once been vital became invisible the moment it stopped being profitable. The tunnels weren't dangerous because they existed, and they were dangerous because no one felt responsible for them anymore. In the months that followed, the underground network was sealed permanently, and massive concrete walls erased passages that had once pulsed with life. The electric locomotives were entombed where they stood, never to move again, and what had once been an engineering triumph became a cautionary relic, locked away to ensure it could never threaten the city again. Today, if you walk along the river, and there's no sign of what happened, the water glides past without a ripple. Tourists lean over railings, traffic hums. The whirlpool is gone. The danger feels imaginary, but beneath your feet, 40 feet down, concrete barriers hold back the weight of the river from a hollow system that still stretches for miles. And a silent reminder that the city isn't solid, it's layered. The flood didn't destroy Chicago, it exposed it. And it revealed how fragile modern life becomes when it rests on forgotten systems and postponed decisions. Infrastructure doesn't fail all at once. It waits, it remembers. And when it finally demands attention, it collects interest. On April 13, 1992, Chicago learned that disasters don't always announce themselves with wind or fire, and sometimes they arrive quietly, through cracks no one wanted to pay to fix. Sometimes they happen beneath your shoes, while the sun is shining, the streets are dry, and a fish swims across a basement floor, carrying a message the city almost ignored.